I'm Sophia Mitchell, 28 years old, and I've spent my entire life in my sister Amber's shadow. But I never expected she'd go this far. The moment I read Mom's text, "Honey, we've decided to attend Amber's wedding," instead, I felt my world collapse. Standing in my wedding dress, alone in the fitting room, staring at my phone as tears blurred my vision. That's when I realized this wasn't just about a wedding date. This was war, and for once, I wasn't going to be the one who surrendered. Before I dive into this story, where are you watching from today? If you're enjoying these true stories, hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of the family drama that might make yours look normal. Now, grab a cup of coffee and settle in, because this wedding drama is just getting started. Growing up with Amber was like living in perpetual second place. My sister, 3 years older at 31, had always been the golden child in our family dynamic. From academics to sports to social life, she excelled effortlessly, or at least that's how it appeared. Whenever I achieved something noteworthy, making honor roll, winning a photography contest in high school, getting accepted to my dream college, Amber would somehow top it within weeks. A higher GPA, a more prestigious award, an Ivy League acceptance. Our parents never tried to hide their favoritism. Dad would beam with pride at Amber's accomplishments, while giving me a distracted, "That's nice, honey," when I shared my own news. Mom was always planning special celebrations for Amber's achievements, while mine warranted maybe a casual dinner out if I was lucky. I grew accustomed to being the afterthought, the second daughter who was good but never quite good enough. By adulthood, it accepted my place in the family hierarchy. I focused on building my own life, finding fulfillment in my career as a marketing manager for a sustainable fashion brand. That's where I met Nathan. Unlike the competitive, achievement-focused men Amber typically dated, Nathan was quietly confident, brilliant without being arrogant, and most importantly, he saw me, really saw me, in a way my family never had. We met during a collaboration between his environmental consulting firm and my company. During our first meeting, he asked thoughtful questions about my ideas, rather than talking over me like most consultants did. After the project wrapped, he asked me to coffee, which turned into dinner, which turned into the most authentic relationship I'd ever experienced. When Nathan proposed after 18 months of dating, it was intimate and perfect, just us on a weekend hiking trip at the summit of a mountain at sunrise. No spectacle, no audience, just a heartfelt question and a resounding yes. The Marquise-cut sapphire ring had belonged to his grandmother, and its vintage setting and unique stone felt like a perfect representation of our relationship, not flashy, but deeply meaningful. I threw myself into planning our wedding with uncharacteristic enthusiasm. For once, this was something that was entirely mine. Nathan and I set the date for June 15th. A perfect early summer Saturday at a charming historic estate an hour outside the city. We chose a palette of dusty blue, silver, and white, with wildflower centerpieces and twinkling lights. I spent hours creating personalized touches, hand-lettered place cards, custom cocktail recipes named after significant moments in our relationship, a photo timeline of our story together. We mailed our save the dates 8 months in advance to ensure our family and friends could arrange to attend. I was especially conscious of giving my extended family plenty of notice, knowing many would need to travel. When I called my parents to make sure they'd received theirs, Mom seemed distracted but confirmed they'd blocked off the date. Just 2 weeks after our save the dates went out, Amber announced her engagement to James, a successful businessman from a well-connected family she'd been dating for just under a year. I was genuinely happy for her despite the familiar sting of having my moment overshadowed yet again. During her elaborate engagement party, something my parents never suggested for Nathan and me, I pushed aside my feelings and played the supportive sister role I'd perfected over the years. "I'm so excited we'll both be planning weddings," Amber gushed, champagne flute in hand. "Well, have to compare notes." That should have been my first warning sign, but I was too naive to see it. In the weeks that followed, Amber called frequently with questions about my wedding plans. She wanted to know my venue, my color scheme, the style of my dress, even which baker I'd chosen for the cake. I shared everything openly, assuming her interest was a rare show of sisterly bonding. Don't you think it's strange she suddenly wants to know every detail? My best friend Lily asked during one of our planning sessions. Lily had witnessed the Amber and Sophia dynamic our entire lives and had always been my reality check. Maybe she's just excited about weddings now that she's engaged too, I suggested, though a seed of doubt had been planted. That seed sprouted roots during a Sunday dinner at our parents' house 3 weeks later. We'd just finished the main course when Amber clinked her glass dramatically. James and I have set our wedding date, she announced, her smile wide but her eyes fixed on me. June 15th. Isn't that wonderful? The table fell silent as everyone processed what Shed just said. Everyone except our parents, who didn't even flinch. But that's I started, my voice barely a whisper. The perfect date, Amber finished, still smiling. Early summer, just like you said. Great minds think alike, right sis? I looked to my parents for support, but they were already congratulating Amber on securing the date, completely ignoring the fact that it was already my wedding day. The remainder of that Sunday dinner passed in a blur. While our parents fawned over Amber's announcement, I sat in stunned silence, pushing food around my plate. Nathan squeezed my hand under the table, his presence the only thing keeping me grounded. We've already looked at the Grand Summit Hotel, Amber continued, naming one of the most exclusive venues in the region. They had a cancellation for that exact date. It must be fate. Mom clapped her hands together. The Grand Summit. Oh, Amber, that's wonderful. I always pictured you getting married somewhere spectacular. The implication being that my historic estate wasn't spectacular enough. I swallowed hard, fighting back tears. Mom, Dad, I finally managed, my voice steadier than I felt. You realize that's the same day as my wedding, right? The date that's been set for months, that you already committed to. A heavy pause followed, during which my parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite decipher. Well, honey, Mom began in that placating tone she reserved for what she considered my overreactions. These things happen. Maybe you could move your date? You haven't sent the formal invitations yet, have you? We sent save the dates 2 months ago, Nathan interjected, his normally calm voice tight with controlled anger. Everyone already has the date. Dad cleared his throat. Let's not make this a bigger issue than it needs to be. I'm sure you girls can work something out. Amber's fiancé James, who had always found pleasant if somewhat bland, looked uncomfortable but remained silent. I wondered briefly if he had any idea what kind of family he was marrying into. After dinner, I cornered Amber in the kitchen as she pretended to help with dishes. You can't seriously be planning your wedding on my date, I said. There are 52 weekends in a year. Pick another one. For a moment, her mask slipped. The sweet, apologetic sister vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating look I recognized from childhood competitions. It's just a coincidence, Sophia, she said, but her eyes told a different story. Besides, the Grand Summit is impossible to book. We got lucky with this cancellation. Lucky? You knew my date for months. You specifically chose the same day. Amber shrugged, dropping all pretense. Your wedding was going to be so basic anyway. Does it really matter if we share the date? It's not like we have that many mutual friends. She leaned closer, her voice low. And let's be honest, the family that matters will be at my wedding. I left my parents' house in tears that night, Nathan driving, because I couldn't see through my anger and hurt. The next morning, I called Rachel, our wedding planner, in a panic. Is there any possibility of changing our date? I asked, already knowing the answer. Rachel sighed sympathetically. Sophia, we've put down non-refundable deposits with all your vendors for June 15th. The photographer, the caterer, the venue, everything is locked in. Finding another date where they're all available again could push you into next year, and you'd lose thousands of dollars. The reality of the situation hit me full force. I'd have to choose between proceeding with my original date, knowing half our family wouldn't attend, or postponing indefinitely and losing all the money we'd already invested. That evening, I asked my parents to meet me for coffee, hoping to reason with them away from Amber's influence. The corner cafe near their house had been our special place when I was young, before Amber's achievements became the family's sole focus. I arrived early, selecting a quiet table and ordering their favorite pastries as a peace offering. They arrived together. My mother's expression already defensive. My father's carefully neutral. Before I could even begin my prepared speech, Mom cut in. "Sophia, I know what you're going to say, but you need to be reasonable about this." "Reasonable," I echoed, disbelief coloring my voice. "How is it reasonable that Amber deliberately chose my wedding date?" "We don't know that she did it deliberately," Dad said, though he couldn't meet my eyes. "Jame's grandmother is flying in from Europe that weekend," Mom added. "She's elderly and can't travel often. They need that specific date." My stomach dropped as I realized they were already making excuses for her. "Did Amber tell you that before or after she announced the date?" Their uncomfortable silence was answer enough. "We've already committed to helping with Amber's wedding financially," Mom finally admitted. "The deposit at the Grand Summit is substantial." And there it was. The first major betrayal laid bare. They had already chosen her wedding over mine, had already allocated funds they'd never offered to me and Nathan, who were paying for our wedding ourselves. "So that's it? Amber gets whatever she wants, like always." My voice cracked despite my efforts to remain composed. "You're being dramatic," Mom said. "This isn't a competition." But it was. It always had been. And Amber always won. I left the cafe without touching my coffee, called Nathan in tears, and spent an hour sobbing on the phone as he tried to comfort me from his business trip across the state. "We'll figure this out together," he promised. Our wedding is going to be beautiful, with or without them." The next day, my cousin Jessica called. We'd been close as children before her family moved across the country, keeping in touch mainly through social media in recent years. "I heard about Amber's wedding date," she said without preamble. "That's messed up, Sophia." For the first time since the announcement, I felt validated. "Everyone's acting like I'm overreacting." "You're not. She's always been like this with you. Remember when you got the lead in the school play and she suddenly needed emergency appendix surgery the night of your performance? I hadn't thought about that in years, how my parents missed my sole starring role to be at the hospital with Amber, only to learn later her appendix was perfectly fine." "This is different," I said. "This is my wedding day." "Exactly," Jessica replied firmly. "Which is why you can't let her win this time." That night, I cried myself to sleep staring at the wedding vision board I'd created, wondering how my perfect day had turned into a nightmare so quickly. The weeks following Amber's announcement brought a social media campaign so calculated it would have impressed a political strategist. First came her engagement photos, professionally shot at sunset with multiple outfit changes. Then the tearful post about difficult family decisions and how sometimes you can't make everyone happy. She never mentioned me directly, but the implication was clear. I was being unreasonable about our shared special day. Mutual friends and extended family began taking sides. Most didn't know the full story, how she'd deliberately chosen my date after months of planning, and her careful crafting of the narrative painted her as the reasonable sister willing to compromise, while I was portrayed as the bridezilla, unwilling to share the spotlight. The second major betrayal came via a group text. 3 of my bridesmaids, all childhood friends who had known both Amber and me for years, informed me they unfortunately couldn't attend my wedding after all. They cited various vague reasons, but social media told the truth. They had all RSVP'd to Amber's wedding. One would be her bridesmaid. "I don't understand." I told Nathan as we sat in our apartment, surrounded by wedding planning materials that now felt tainted. "These are people who know me, who supposedly care about me. How can they not see what she's doing?" "Amber's always been charismatic," Nathan said gently. "And the Grand Summit is pretty impressive. Some people are drawn to flash. That wasn't all they were drawn to." The next blow came when Amber somehow discovered the details of my wedding dress, A custom design ID worked on with a local seamstress, incorporating lace from my grandmother's gown into a modern silhouette. 2 days after my final fitting, Amber posted photos from a bridal salon featuring her in a dress nearly identical to mine, but from a famous designer with a 5-figure price tag. The caption read, "Found my dream dress. Can't wait for everyone to see me walking down the aisle in this beauty. Number June bride, number say yes to the dress." I confronted her at our parents' house, cornering her in the guest bathroom during another family dinner I'd been guilted into attending. "How did you know about my dress design?" "Those were private sketches." Amber applied another layer of lip gloss, not bothering to look at me. "Great minds think alike, I guess. That's not possible." The neckline, the way the train connects, those were custom elements I designed with Marion. "Oh, you used Marion?" I thought about her. But then I found Paolo at Elegance. And well, she gestured dismissively. "You get what you pay for." I fought to keep my voice steady. "Amber, why are you doing this? Is it not enough to take my wedding date? Do you have to copy everything else too?" "Copy?" She laughed, finally turning to face me. "Sophia, be realistic. I've always had the better taste, the better style, the better everything. If anything, people will think you copied me." She patted my cheek condescendingly. "But don't worry. I'm sure your little wedding will be cute." I nearly broke then, watching her saunter out to rejoin the family who consistently chose her over me. I locked the bathroom door and pressed my forehead against the cool mirror, trying to compose myself. When I returned to the dining room, my mother was showing everyone photos of Amber's venue on her iPad. "The Grand Summit has that gorgeous spiral staircase for the bride's entrance," she gushed. "And the crystal chandeliers! It's just breathtaking. Sophia's venue has character." Dad offered in what he probably thought was support. "It's very rustic." "Not rustic, Dad. Historic," I corrected, my patience wearing thin. "It's a restored 19th century estate with architectural significance." "The roof better not leak," Amber quipped. "June can be so rainy." "Actually, my venue has a perfect contingency plan for weather." I started to explain, but Mom cut me off. "Amber, did you tell everyone about the chef you booked? The one from that cooking show?" And just like that, I was invisible again. Later that night, when Nathan and I were alone, I broke down. "I'm thinking of just canceling everything," I sobbed. "What's the point? Half the guests won't come. My own family prefers her wedding, and now she's even copied my dress. That's exactly what she wants," Nathan said firmly, taking my hands in his. "She wins if you cancel." "We're not letting her win, Sophia. This is our day, not hers." "But how do we compete with the Grand Summit and celebrity chefs and whatever else she pulls out of her hat next?" "We don't compete," he said. "We do something better, something true to us. Something she can't copy because it's uniquely ours." The next day, I met with Rachel, our wedding planner, expecting to discuss damage control. Instead, she surprised me with unexpected perspective. "I've been in this business 15 years, she said as we sat in her cozy office. "I've seen family drama you wouldn't believe, but this is next level." I managed a weak laugh. "Tell me about it. The question is, what do you want to do about it?" I considered this. "I don't know. Part of me wants to fight back, but another part wonders if it's even worth it." Rachel leaned forward. "Sophia, I've worked with many brides. And the ones who have the most beautiful weddings aren't the ones with the biggest budgets or the fanciest venues. They're the ones who stay true to themselves and their relationships. Your sister can copy your color scheme, your dress style, even your date. But she can't copy what makes you and Nathan special." As I drove home, Rachel's words echoing in my mind, I scrolled through Instagram at a red light. Amber had posted again, this time a photo of wedding invitations nearly identical to the ones Nathan and I had designed, but with gold foil and heavier cardstock. The caption read, "The countdown begins. Can't wait to celebrate with everyone who matters. Number June bride." Number Grand Summit Wedding. The light turned green, and as I accelerated, something shifted inside me. The hurt and despair hardened into resolve. I was done being Amber's shadow, done accepting whatever scraps of attention my family deigned to throw my way. I stared at the smug smile in her profile picture, and made a decision. Enough. I took an unprecedented step the following Monday. I requested a week off work. In 5 years at my company, it'd never taken more than 2 consecutive days. My boss Diane raised an eyebrow but approved it immediately when I explained I was dealing with wedding complications. Family can be the greatest blessing and the greatest curse, she said, surprising me with her insight. Take the time you need. I spent the first day of my impromptu break organizing my thoughts in the small home office Nathan and I shared. I created a timeline of everything that had happened since we announced our engagement, looking for patterns in Amber's behavior. The systematic way Shed gathered information about my wedding plans before announcing her own identical ones was undeniable when laid out chronologically. On Tuesday, I met Jessica for lunch at a cafe far from our usual spots, minimizing the chance of running into mutual acquaintances. My cousin had flown in for a business trip but made time specifically to talk wedding drama. "I've got information," she said without preamble after ordering her salad. "You're not going to like it." I braced myself. I figured as much. I was at Heather's birthday last weekend. Heather was a childhood friend who remained close with Amber. "Your sister had a bit too much wine and started talking about your wedding." "What did she say?" I asked, though I could already guess. "She told everyone she couldn't let Sophia have this one thing because you've always been the martyr of the family. She said she was tired of hearing about your perfect love story and how authentic you and Nathan are." The words stung, even though they confirmed what I already suspected. "There's more," Jessica continued. "Jameis' family is seriously connected, old money, influence, the works. His grandmother is on the board of 3 major charities. Amber's been desperate to impress them, and apparently, a big society wedding is part of her strategy. So this isn't just about upstaging me, it's about impressing her future in-laws, both, I think." She also mentioned the grandmother genuinely is flying in that weekend for some charity gala, so Amber scheduled the wedding to coincide. But she knew about that before you even sent your save the dates. She could have warned you. The calculated nature of it all made my head spin. But something else Jessica said caught my attention. "Wait, what did you mean about me and Nathan being authentic?" Jessica shifted uncomfortably. Amber implied. "Well, she said your relationship isn't as perfect as everyone thinks. That Nathan is, and I'm quoting here, settling for the safe choice." The rage I felt in that moment was clarifying. This wasn't just about a wedding date or family attention anymore. This was Amber attacking the one part of my life that had always remained untouched by our rivalry. My relationship with Nathan. After lunch with Jessica, I drove to my parents' house while they were at work, using my emergency key to let myself in. I felt slightly guilty about the intrusion but reminded myself this was information gathering, not revenge. Yet, in the home office, I found what I was looking for: copies of my wedding planning documents in a folder labeled Sophia's Wedding. Next to it sat a much thicker folder: Amber's Wedding. I took photos of both contents with my phone, noting with a sinking heart that my mother had indeed shared all my planning details with Amber. Pages were annotated with notes like, "Upgrade this and more elaborate version here." The third betrayal hit harder than I expected. My own mother had been an active accomplice in Amber's sabotage. The next phase of my investigation led me to a coffee shop near Jameis' office. Through social media research, I'd discovered his sister Whitney frequently stopped there after her yoga class. Orchestrating a chance meeting felt manipulative, but I reminded myself I wasn't creating fiction, just ensuring the truth came to light. "You're Sophia, right?" Whitney said when I approached her table, recognition flickering in her eyes. "Amber's sister. That's me," I confirmed, keeping my tone light. "Mind if I join you for a minute?" Whitney gestured to the empty chair, curiosity evident. Wed met briefly at Amber and Jameis' engagement party, but hadn't spoken much. This is a bit awkward. I began, but I wanted to clear the air about something. There seems to be some confusion about the wedding dates. Whitney's expression shifted subtly. You mean how you're both getting married on the same day? James mentioned there was some tension. Did he mention that my date was set 8 months ago? That Amber deliberately chose the same day after knowing our plans? Whitney set down her coffee cup. That's not how Amber presented it. I figured as much, I said carefully. What did she tell you? She said you weren't close, that you had selected the same date by coincidence, and when she tried to discuss it with you, you refused to consider changing your plans despite knowing their grandmother could only attend that weekend. I let out a slow breath. That's interesting, considering I only learned about the grandmother after Amber announced her date, and she's never once asked me to change my plans. She simply declared her wedding would be on the same day. For the next hour, Whitney and I talked candidly. I showed her the timeline I'd created, the save the dates Wed sent months before Amber's engagement, the evidence of how Amber had systematically copied every element of my wedding. Whitney, to my surprise, was receptive. Jameis' family values authenticity above all else, she explained. His parents built their business on transparency and integrity. They'd be horrified if they knew about this. Manipulation. I'm not trying to cause problems between James and Amber, I clarified, though part of me wondered if that was entirely true. I just want to be able to have my wedding day without all this drama. Whitney nodded thoughtfully. I'll talk to James. He should know what he's walking into. By Friday, I had compiled enough information to develop a strategy. Nathan came home from work to find our living room transformed into a war room of sorts, with notes and evidence organized across our coffee table. This looks intense, he said, loosening his tie as he surveyed my work. Should I be worried? I outlined my 3-part plan. First, documentation and transparency about the timeline. Second, a complete reinvention of our wedding to make it impossible for Amber to copy. And third, a direct approach to James with the evidence of Amber's behavior. Nathan listened carefully, his expression growing more concerned. I'm all for standing up for ourselves, but just don't sink to her level completely. Okay? I don't want this to change who you are. His concern touched me. I'm not planning anything malicious, I assured him, just making sure the truth is known. And creating a wedding that's so authentically us that Amber can't possibly replicate it. As I prepared to execute the first phase of my plan, I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just reacting to Amber's machinations. I was taking control of my own narrative. For once, I told Nathan as we finalized our strategy, I'm going to write my own story. My counter-offensive began with a simple website. I spent Saturday creating a clean, factual timeline of our wedding planning process, complete with dated photographs, screenshots of vendor contracts, and copies of our save the dates. I added no commentary, no accusations, just a straightforward documentation of when each decision had been made and communicated. On Sunday evening, I sent the link to our extended family and friends with a brief, carefully worded email. Dear loved ones, there seems to be some confusion regarding the upcoming wedding dates in June. To clarify the timeline and avoid further misunderstandings, I've compiled this factual record of our planning process. Nathan and I look forward to celebrating with all who can attend our wedding on June 15th, as planned since last year. With love, Sophia. The response was immediate. My phone began buzzing with text messages and calls within minutes. Most expressed shock at the situation, having been unaware of the full context. Several apologized for assuming I was being difficult about sharing the date. A few of the bridesmaids who had defected to Amber's wedding messaged with awkward attempts to explain their decisions. I let the communications go to voicemail and focused on preparing for the week ahead. The truth was out there now. How people responded to it was their choice. The calm I'd cultivated shattered Monday morning when Amber called, her voice trembling with rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she demanded without greeting. Everyone's talking about your little website. You're trying to sabotage my wedding. I'm simply clarifying the timeline. I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. Nothing on that site is untrue. You're making me look like the villain. Your actions are doing that, Amber. Not my documentation of them. She switched tactics, her voice turning tearful. I can't believe my own sister would try to turn everyone against me before my wedding. Mom and Dad are furious with you. Right on cue, my phone beeped with an incoming call from our mother. I ignored it. I'm not turning anyone against you. I'm just making sure people know what actually happened. Take down the site, she demanded. Or I swear you'll what? Take my wedding date, copy my dress, turn our parents against me? Already done, I interrupted, surprised by my own boldness. I'm not taking down facts, Amber. For once, you don't get to rewrite history. I ended the call as she was still sputtering threats. Minutes later, our mother called again. This time, I answered, Sophia Mitchell, what were you thinking? She began without preamble. Your father and I are extremely disappointed in this public airing of family matters. I'm simply stating facts, Mom. When were you planning to tell me you shared all my wedding details with Amber specifically so she could copy them? A telling pause. That's not what happened. I was just helping both my daughters. I found the folders, Mom. I saw your notes. Another pause. You went through our things? That's an invasion of privacy. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. Like sharing my private wedding plans with Amber so she could steal them? That kind of invasion, this behavior has to stop, she declared, ignoring my point entirely. Your father and I have discussed it. And if you continue this campaign against your sister, we won't be attending your wedding at all. The fourth betrayal, delivered so casually it took my breath away. You're actually threatening to skip my wedding if I don't let Amber continue manipulating everyone. We're asking you to behave like an adult and stop this ridiculous competition. There is no competition, Mom. There's just Amber deliberately trying to ruin my wedding and you helping her. I won't listen to these accusations. Take down that website and apologize to your sister, or don't expect us at your wedding. The line went dead. I sat in stunned silence, the finality of her ultimatum ringing in my ears. When Nathan came home that evening, he found me calmly editing photos at my desk, no evidence of the emotional tornado that had torn through my day. My parents aren't coming to the wedding. I informed him, my voice surprisingly steady. Nathan knelt beside my chair, taking my hands in his. Are you okay? Strangely, yes. It hurts, but it also feels clarifying. Like I finally know where I stand. He studied my face. What do you want to do? Exactly what we planned, I said. Create our wedding. Our way. The next day, I met with Marco Vega, a wedding planner known for creating unique, personalized events. Rachel had recommended him after I explained our situation, admitting that while she was good at traditional weddings, what we needed now was someone with a more creative vision. Marco's office was an explosion of color and texture, mood boards covering every wall, and he greeted me with espresso in tiny handmade ceramic cups. So, he said after Eid explained our situation, you want a wedding your sister cannot possibly copy. Yes, but more importantly, one that truly represents Nathan and me. We've been so caught up in tradition and expectations that we've lost sight of what we actually want. Marco's eyes lit up. Now that's a challenge I can embrace. Tell me about you and Nathan, not the usual stuff. What makes your connection unique? What experiences have shaped you as a couple? For the next 2 hours, I talked about our relationship in ways I never had before, how Nathan and I bonded over obscure indie films, our shared love of stargazing, the road trips where Wed discovered tiny towns not on any map, our mutual passion for environmental causes, how he collected vintage vinyl records, and I practiced film photography as a hobby, how Wed rather spend an evening cooking together than at a fancy restaurant. As I spoke, Marco sketched rapidly, occasionally interrupting with questions that delved deeper into our story. When he finally turned his sketchpad around, I gasped. This is perfect. The concept Head created was worlds away from the traditional wedding he'd been planning. Instead of the historic estate, he suggested moving the ceremony to Nathan's family's lakeside property, a place where Wed spent countless weekends stargazing, and that held genuine meaning for us. The reception would feature food stations inspired by our favorite road trip discoveries, vinyl record centerpieces, and a photo display of my actual photography work. Well, create experience zones rather than traditional reception tables, he explained. A mini film festival of clips from your favorite movies. A stargazing lounge with telescopes set up. Interactive elements that tell your story. Amber could never copy this, I said, feeling a weight lifting from my shoulders. Because she can't copy who you are, Marco replied with a knowing smile. Over the next week, we worked furiously to reimagine our wedding. I met with vendors who had originally been booked for our traditional celebration, explaining the situation with surprising candor. Most were intrigued by the challenge and excited to create something unique. A few couldn't accommodate the changes, but Marco had a network of creative professionals eager to step in. The most delicate part was approaching vendors who were now working with both Amber and me. Marco handled these conversations with diplomatic skill, ensuring they understood we weren't asking them to break confidentiality or choose sides just to maintain strict separation between the two events. Your sister won't know what we're planning until the day of, he assured me. By then, it will be too late for her to copy anything. Nathan's family embraced the change enthusiastically, his father immediately offering their lakeside property and his mother volunteering to coordinate with local vendors she knew in the area. Their unwavering support contrasted painfully with my own family's absence, but I was learning to accept this new reality. In an unexpected turn, my boss Diane called me into her office the following Monday. "How are the wedding plans coming along?" she asked, her usual brisk manner softened with concern. I gave her the condensed version of recent events, including the venue change and concept overhaul. "A lakeside wedding sounds lovely," she said when I'd finished. "But where are you planning to stay afterward? That area is quite remote." I admitted we hadn't figured that out yet, with the honeymoon planning sidelined amid all the chaos. Diane reached into her desk drawer and handed me a key. "My family has a vacation home about 20 minutes from there. It's on a private cove, very secluded. Consider it yours for the week after your wedding." Her unexpected generosity brought tears to my eyes. "Diane, I can't accept that. You can and you will," she said firmly. "I've watched you handle this situation with more grace than most would manage. Consider it my wedding gift." As I left her office, my phone chimed with a text message from Amber. "You think you're so clever, but you have no idea what's coming." I showed the message to Nathan that evening as we worked on our revised guest list. "She's bluffing," he said, though his furrowed brow betrayed his concern. "She doesn't know what we're planning." "Maybe," I agreed. "But Amber's always been resourceful when it comes to getting her way. We need to be prepared for her to escalate." Little did I know just how far my sister was willing to go to maintain her position as the family favorite. I should have anticipated Amber would not accept defeat quietly. Her counterattack began with methodical precision, targeting the foundation of our wedding plans. Over the next 2 weeks, Nathan and I received a series of increasingly disturbing calls from our vendors. The first came from our photographer, confused about supposed changes to our photography package. "I got your message about switching to the basic coverage instead of the full-day documentation," he said. "But it seemed odd after our previous discussions about capturing the entire celebration." "I never requested any changes," I told him, a chill running down my spine. Similar calls followed. Our caterer had received confirmation that we wanted to downgrade from the custom menu to their standard buffet option. The florist had been instructed to cancel our wildflower arrangements in favor of whatever is cheapest. Our DJ had a message requesting cancellation of our carefully curated playlist, replaced with generic wedding standards. In each case, someone had contacted them, pretending to be me. Marco moved quickly to secure our relationships with each vendor, establishing password protection for all future communications and having me personally visit each to apologize for the confusion. "Someone's deliberately sabotaging your wedding," he stated after the fifth such incident. "And they have your vendor list." "Amber," I said with certainty. "But how did she get access to that information?" The answer came that evening when Jessica called. "You need to check social media," she said without greeting. "Right now." I pulled up Instagram to find several mutual friends posting sympathetic messages with the hashtag number #SupportSophia. Clicking on it revealed dozens of posts expressing concern about our scaled-back wedding due to financial difficulties. The source became clear when I saw Amber had commented on several. "It's so sad they're having money troubles." I offered to help, but you know how proud Sophia can be. "That's why we're trying to keep our own celebration low-key too, out of respect." The calculated falseness of it made my blood boil. She was simultaneously spreading rumors about our financial situation while positioning herself as the considerate sister, all while actively trying to sabotage our vendor relationships. She's trying to make it look like we're downsizing because we can't afford our original plans, I told Nathan when he arrived home. That way, when people see how different our wedding is from the original concept, they'll think it's because we ran out of money, not because we chose to do something more authentic. "That's actually pretty clever," Nathan admitted reluctantly. "Diabolical, but clever." The worst was yet to come. The following weekend, we attended a family dinner at my parents' house, a tense affair. It agreed to only because Nathan thought maintaining some semblance of normalcy might be wise. It just excused myself to use the restroom when I felt something cold and wet splash across my chest and lap. Amber stood before me, her wineglass now empty, a look of exaggerated horror on her face. "Oh my God, I'm so clumsy," she exclaimed loudly, ensuring everyone in the dining room could hear. "Your dress! I'm so sorry." I looked down at my new cream silk blouse, now soaked with red wine. The stain spread rapidly across the delicate fabric, ruining it completely. "That was deliberate," I said quietly, so only she could hear. She leaned closer, her apologetic expression never wavering for our audience. Imagine what could happen to a wedding dress. Accidents are so common. The threat was unmistakable. When I returned to the table after attempting to salvage my blouse, my mother was fussing over Amber, assuring her it was just an accident and Sophia knows you didn't mean it. I remained silent through the rest of the dinner, the fifth betrayal settling over me like a shroud. My parents had witnessed Amber's accident from across the room, had seen her calculated approach with the full wineglass, yet they chose, once again, to believe whatever fiction made their golden child look blameless. The incident with the wine prompted an emergency meeting with Marco the next morning. I recounted Amber's veiled threat against my wedding dress. "The dress is currently at Marian's studio for final adjustments," I explained, panic rising in my throat. What if Amber somehow gets access to it? Marco's response was immediate and practical. "We move the dress today. I have a friend who designs for Broadway. Her studio has better security than most banks. And we create a decoy." By that afternoon, my real wedding dress was safely stored in the Theater District studio, while a similar but significantly less expensive backup hung in Marian's shop, a sacrificial decoy, should Amber's accidents extend that far. The dress situation resolved, we turned our attention to the guest list. Given Amber's increasingly aggressive tactics, we needed to be strategic about who received our updated wedding information. "We create tiers," Marco suggested. "Inner circle gets the full details immediately. Extended friends and family receive location information 1 week before. General acquaintances get directions the day before." "Isn't that complicated for guests?" Nathan asked. "Less complicated than having your sister show up with a party bus full of wedding crashers," Marco replied dryly. That evening, after hours of wedding crisis management, Nathan suggested we take a break and visit his parents for dinner. I initially resisted, exhausted by family dynamics, but he insisted the change of scene would do me good. Arthur and Elaine Westbrook welcomed us with genuine warmth that contrasted painfully with my own family's recent coldness. After dinner, as Nathan helped his father with something in the garage, Elaine poured me a second glass of wine and settled beside me on their porch swing. "Nathan told us what's been happening," she said gently, "with your sister and parents." I stared at my wine glass, embarrassed. "I'm sorry you've been dragged into this drama. Family is rarely simple, dear." She patted my hand. Arthur's brother didn't speak to him for 15 years over their father's will. Eventually they reconciled, but it took time and distance. "I don't know if my family and I will ever reconcile after this," I admitted, voicing the fear that had been growing in my heart. "My parents have made their choice clear, and it isn't me." "People can surprise you," Elaine said. "Sometimes it takes a serious wake-up call. But regardless of what happens with them, I want you to know something." She waited until I met her gaze. "You are family to us now, not future family, not almost family. You are our family, wedding or no wedding." Her words broke something open inside me, and for the first time since Amber's announcement, I cried without restraint, not from hurt or anger, but from relief at being fully accepted. The next morning, newly fortified by the Westbrook's support, I faced another challenge. Nathan had received a disturbing text message from my father. "Son, I think we need to talk man to man about what you're getting into with this family. Call me when you can speak privately." I watched Nathan's face darken as he read it. "Has trying to warn me off," he said incredulously, "as if I don't know exactly who I'm choosing to marry." Instead of calling my father back, Nathan did something unexpected. He drove to my parents' house and confronted them directly, something I learned only afterward when he returned home, his expression both grim and satisfied. "I told them exactly what I think of their behavior," he explained. "How they've consistently chosen Amber over you your entire life. How they've enabled her worst impulses. How they've failed you as parents." "What did they say?" I asked, both terrified and eager to know. "Your mother denied everything. Claimed I was being manipulated by you." His expression softened. "But your father, I think I might have gotten through to him. At least a little." He seemed genuinely surprised when I laid out the pattern, like he'd never seen it clearly before. The confrontation triggered the family argument that had been brewing for years. My father called that evening, asking if we could meet. Alone at a coffee shop the next day, he listened as I recounted a lifetime of feeling second-best incidents I'd never mentioned because I'd assumed they were apparent to everyone. "I never realized," he said repeatedly, genuine remorse in his voice. "I never saw the pattern." "How could you not see it, Dad? It's been my entire life." "Parents don't always see their children clearly," he admitted. "We see what we expect to see." Amber was always louder, more demanding. "You were our easy child, we never had to worry about you." Because I learned early that expressing my needs got me nowhere. He flinched at this truth. "Your mother and we've enabled Amber's behavior." "I see that now. But Sophia, she's still going ahead with the wedding on your date. Your mother has committed to helping her, and I don't know how to fix this." It wasn't the full support I'd hoped for, but it was the first acknowledgement in my life that the family dynamic wasn't fair. It was something. As I left the coffee shop, my phone chimed with a notification. An anonymous email with no subject line, containing only a cryptic message. "Maybe you should check who your fiancé has been texting." I stared at the screen, a chill washing over me. Amber had reached her endgame, attacking the one relationship I valued above all others. I sat in my car outside the coffee shop for nearly an hour, the anonymous email burning in my mind like acid. A rational part of me recognized this as exactly what it was: Amber's attempt to plant seeds of doubt about the one person who had consistently supported me. Yet another part, the insecure child who had grown up never quite good enough, whispered, "What if? What if Nathan had been in contact with Amber? What if all the confidence and support had shown was a facade? What if, like everyone else, he ultimately found her more compelling? I drove home in a fog, my thoughts spiraling. Nathan was at a client meeting, so I had the apartment to myself and too much time to dwell on possibilities. I checked my email again, half hoping the message had somehow disappeared. Instead, I found a new one from the same anonymous sender. This one contained screenshots of what appeared to be text conversations between Nathan and Amber. The messages showed them arranging to meet for coffee, Nathan complimenting Amber's new profile picture, Amber responding with flirtatious gratitude. The final exchange suggested they were keeping their meetings secret from me. My hands shook as I examined the images. They looked authentic, the right phone interface, Nathan's profile picture, his texting style with minimal punctuation. But something felt off. The timestamps showed these conversations happening during times I was certain Nathan had been with me. I heard his key in the lock and quickly closed my laptop, heart pounding. How would I even begin to address this? "Hey," he called, setting down his briefcase. "Sorry I'm late. Client meeting ran over." He kissed my cheek before noticing my expression. "What's wrong?" I reopened my laptop wordlessly, turning the screen toward him. Nathan's face transformed as he read, confusion giving way to shocked disbelief, then anger. "This is completely fabricated," he said, voice tight. "I've never had these conversations with Amber. I barely have her number saved in my phone." "The timestamps," I said quietly. "You were with me during most of these." "During all of them," he corrected firmly. "Check our photos from the lake house weekend, that's when this conversation supposedly happened." He pulled out his phone, opened his message history, and handed it to me. "Look for yourself. No messages to or from Amber, ever." I scrolled through his messages, finding nothing remotely incriminating. The relief was overwhelming, but questions remained. "Someone created these screenshots," I said. "They look real. There are apps for faking text conversations," Nathan explained, his tech background evident. "Amber or one of her friends probably used one of those. How do I know these are the fake ones and your phone isn't just scrubbed clean?" The question came out before I could stop it, the lingering doubt voicing itself. Nathan's hurt was visible, but he didn't react defensively. Instead, he sat beside me and took my hands. "Sophia, you know me. You know us. Do you really believe I would betray you like this? With your sister, of all people." Looking into his eyes, I felt ashamed for doubting him, even momentarily. "No," I whispered. "I don't. This is exactly what Amber wants to make you question the one relationship that's been constant through all of this. Don't give her that power." He was right. And in that moment, rather than driving us apart as Amber had intended, her scheme had the opposite effect. Our relationship emerged stronger, having weathered a direct attack and held firm. The next morning, I received a third email from the anonymous sender. This one contained a single line: "Ask Heather about the screenshots." Heather Williams had been my friend since middle school before gradually gravitating toward Amber's orbit in recent years. The sixth betrayal stung particularly deep. Heather had been a bridesmaid at my engagement party, had helped me address save the dates, had known exactly how much Nathan meant to me. I called her directly, my voice steady despite my anger. "I know you helped Amber create fake text conversations between Nathan and her." Heather's shocked silence confirmed the accusation before she stuttered a response. I don't know what you're talking about." "Stop lying, Heather. The anonymous sender told me you were involved." "Anonymous sender." Her confusion sounded genuine. "Sophia, I swear I don't know anything about fake texts." "Then why would someone tell me to ask you specifically?" There was a long pause. "Because I refused to help," she finally admitted. "Amber asked me to create fake screenshots for her. I said no. She must have found someone else and is trying to implicate me because I wouldn't go along with it." I wasn't sure whether to believe her, but her explanation had a ring of truth. "Why did you say no?" "You've taken her side in everything else." "Because it crossed a line." Heather said quietly. Copying wedding details is petty, but messing with someone's relationship, that's different. Nathan's a good guy, Sophia. He doesn't deserve to be dragged into Amber's games. After ending the call, I felt a strange sense of clarity. Amber's escalation to attacking my relationship had revealed something important. She saw Nathan as a threat to her control over me and my family. Because he was the one person who consistently put me first, who saw through her manipulations, who empowered me to stand up for myself. Later that day, Whitney called with unexpected news. "Jameis' sister," Nathan asked, as I stared at my phone. "Why would she be calling you?" I answered cautiously. "Whitney, hi. I have information you might want to know," she said without preamble. "About why Amber was so determined to have her wedding on the same day as yours." I put the call on speaker so Nathan could hear. "I'm listening. Jameis' grandmother is only in the country that one weekend in June. She lives primarily in Switzerland and rarely travels due to her health. But her presence was non-negotiable for Jameis' parents. They're very traditional about family attendance at weddings. So Amber needed that specific date to secure the marriage into a wealthy family," I concluded. "Essentially, yes. But there's more. Jameis' family values authenticity and integrity above all else. It's been the cornerstone of their business for generations. If they knew Amber had deliberately sabotaged her own sister's wedding, copied all your plans, and spread rumors about your finances." The implication hung in the air. Amber's relationship with James, or more accurately, with his family's social standing and wealth, was potentially fragile if the truth came to light. "I'm not trying to break them up," I said, surprising myself with how genuinely I meant it. "I know," Whitney replied, "which is why I'm telling you this. James should know who he's marrying. What he does with that information is up to him." After the call ended, Nathan and I discussed our next steps late into the night. We had leverage now, the ability to potentially disrupt Amber's carefully constructed facade with Jameis' family, but using it felt dangerously close to sinking to her level. If we expose her to James, are we any better than she is? I wondered aloud. There's a difference between malicious sabotage and honest disclosure, Nathan pointed out. She's actively trying to hurt you. Telling James the truth about her behavior isn't revenge, it's allowing him to make an informed decision about his future. I thought about it from Jameis' perspective. If I were about to marry someone who had shown this level of deception and manipulation, I'd want to know. Exactly, Nathan agreed. This isn't about punishing Amber. It's about truth. Still, I hesitated. Jessica warned me not to cross certain lines. There's a line between seeking justice and becoming vindictive. Nathan acknowledged. We need to stay on the right side of it. We finally settled on a plan that felt ethically sound. I would meet with James once, lay out the facts without embellishment, and leave the decision entirely to him. No ultimatums, no pressure, just truth. As I prepared for this meeting, gathering evidence and organizing my thoughts, I felt surprisingly calm. I wasn't trying to destroy my sister, just ensure that the reality of her behavior came to light. What happened after that would be determined by the choices she had made, not by my desire for revenge. For the first time in my life, I was standing up to Amber not out of competition or resentment, but from a place of clarity about what was right. The week before my wedding arrived with a strange sense of calm. After months of chaos and escalating tension, I'd reached a place of acceptance about the situation with my family. My dress was safely stored, our new wedding plans were progressing smoothly, and most importantly, my relationship with Nathan had emerged stronger from Amber's attempts to undermine it. It arranged to meet James at a quiet cafe on the edge of the financial district where he worked. He arrived precisely on time, looking slightly confused but polite. "Sophia," he greeted me, taking the seat across from mine. "This is unexpected." "Thank you for meeting me," I replied, noticing his guarded expression. "I imagine Amber's told you her version of our situation." A flicker of discomfort crossed his face. "She's mentioned some tensions around the wedding date coincidence. That's what I wanted to talk to you about," I said carefully. There are some things you should know before you get married. James' posture stiffened. If you're here to try to convince me to call off the wedding, I'm not, I interrupted. I'm here to show you evidence of Amber's behavior so you can make your own informed decision. For the next 30 minutes, I methodically presented the documentation ED compiled. The timeline showing my wedding had been planned months before Amber's engagement. Emails proving Shed deliberately copied every element of my wedding. Screenshots of her social media campaign to paint me as financially struggling. Testimonies from vendors about her impersonating me to sabotage my arrangements. I concluded with the fabricated text messages Shed created to suggest Nathan was being unfaithful with her. Throughout my presentation, James remained mostly silent, his expression shifting from skepticism to concern to something approaching dismay. When I finished, he sat back, rubbing his temples. "Why are you showing me all this?" he finally asked. "Because if I were about to marry someone, I'd want to know who they really are," I answered honestly. "What you do with this information is entirely your decision. I'm not asking you to leave her or cancel the wedding. I'm asking you to know who you're marrying." James studied me for a long moment. "You don't seem vindictive about this." "Most people would be furious." I was. I admitted. For a long time. "But this isn't about punishing Amber. It's about truth." He gathered the documents I'd laid out, organizing them with the precision that matched his tailored suit. "I appreciate your candor, Sophia. I need to think about all this. That's all I ask," I said, rising to leave. "And James? I genuinely hope you make the decision that's right for you." As I walked away, I felt a weight lifting. I'd done what I could to ensure the truth was known. The rest was out of my hands. 3 days before my wedding, as I was reviewing final details with Marco, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. Opening it revealed Amber, her eyes red-rimmed and makeup smudged, a shocking departure from her usually flawless appearance. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside to let her enter. Nathan was meeting with his groomsmen, so we were alone in the apartment. "James confronted me," she said without preamble, sinking onto our sofa. "He showed me everything you gave him. The timeline, the vendor statements, the fake texts, everything." I remained standing, arms crossed. "And he didn't call off the wedding," she said, a hint of defiance returning to her tone. "But he's postponed it indefinitely. Says we need to go to couples therapy before hell, consider setting a new date." Her voice broke slightly. His parents were there when he confronted me. The look on his mother's face. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost, "What do you want from me, Amber?" She looked up, vulnerability showing through her carefully constructed facade. "I don't know. To explain? To apologize? To understand why you had to ruin this for me?" "I didn't ruin anything," I said quietly. "Your actions did that. I simply made sure the truth was known. It was my one chance," she whispered, tears forming. "James' family is everything our parents wished we could be: successful, respected, old money. Marrying him was supposed to fix everything." "Fix what, exactly?" "Me," she exclaimed, the word bursting out like it had been trapped for years. "Don't you get it? I've always had to be perfect. The successful daughter, the beautiful one, the accomplished one. It's exhausting, Sophia. You have no idea what it's like." I stared at her in disbelief. "Are you serious right now? You think I don't know what it's like to feel inadequate? I've spent my entire life in your shadow, never measuring up, never being enough for our parents." "That's not," she started, then stopped. "I've always been jealous of you," she admitted, the confession seeming to surprise her as much as it did me. "Jealous? Of what?" "Of how easy everything seems for you, how you don't need to prove your worth constantly, how you found someone who actually loves you for who you are, not what you represent." She wiped at her tears angrily. "Do you know what Mom said when I brought James home for the first time? Finally, someone worthy of our Amber. Not someone who makes you happy, but someone worthy. Like I'm a prize to be won by the right bidder." The revelation stunned me into silence. For the first time, I glimpsed the pressure Amber had lived under, the flip side of the preferential treatment I'd envied. Her achievements hadn't been celebrated. They'd been expected. Her beauty and success weren't gifts. They were obligations. "That doesn't excuse what you did," I said finally. "I know," she admitted. "I just couldn't stand watching you have this perfect, authentic relationship when everything in my life felt like a performance." We talked for nearly 2 hours, unpacking decades of misunderstanding and competition. I learned that Amber had grown up believing she needed achievements to secure our parents' love, while I'd grown up believing nothing I did would ever be enough to earn it. Different wounds from the same dysfunctional family. When she left, there was a fragile truce between us. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But perhaps the beginning of understanding. The temporary peace was shattered the next morning when my mother called, her voice tight with anger. "How could you do this to your sister?" she demanded, going behind her back to James with all these accusations. "They weren't accusations, Mom. They were facts. You've always been jealous of Amber's success," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "But to try to sabotage her relationship? That's a new low. Even for you. The 7th betrayal, perhaps the most predictable, yet still painful. Even faced with irrefutable evidence of Amber's manipulation, my mother chose to rewrite reality to maintain her preferred narrative. "I'm not having this conversation again," I said firmly. "If you can't see the pattern after all this time, that's your choice. But I won't keep participating in it. Your father and I have discussed this," she announced. "If you continue this behavior, well, have no choice but to." "To what? Not attend my wedding? Already decided that? Cut me off financially? I've supported myself for years. Disown me?" At this point, that might be a relief. I surprised myself with my candor. "I'm getting married on Saturday, Mom. You're welcome to attend if you want to be part of my life moving forward. If not, that's your decision to live with." I ended the call before she could respond. Nathan returned home to find me calmly continuing with wedding preparations as if the conversation had never happened. "Everything okay?" he asked cautiously. "Actually, yes." I realized, somewhat surprised. For the first time in my life, I feel completely clear about where I stand with my family and what I'm willing to accept from them going forward. The morning of our wedding dawned bright and clear, the lake by Nathan's family property sparkling in the early summer sun. I prepared with Lily, Jessica, and the bridesmaids who had remained loyal throughout the drama, feeling a profound sense of gratitude for these true friendships. As I slipped into my dress, the real one, safely retrieved from its secure hiding place, my phone chimed with a text. I hesitated before checking it, wary of anything that might disrupt my hard-won peace. It was from my mother. "Amber's been exposed. Wedding called off. We need to talk." I showed it to Lily, who raised an eyebrow. "Drama until the very end," she commented. "What are you going to do?" I considered for a moment, then tucked the phone away. "Nothing." I decided. Today isn't about Amber or my parents. It's about Nathan and me, and the life we're choosing to build together. With that, I stepped into the next chapter of my story, one where I would no longer be defined by old family patterns or others' expectations, but by the authentic life Nathan and I would create together. Our wedding day unfolded with a beauty and authenticity I couldn't have imagined during those initial months of traditional planning. The lakeside ceremony took place at sunset, with string lights twinkling in the trees and the water reflecting the pink and orange sky. Instead of formal rows of chairs, guests gathered in a semicircle on colorful blankets and cushions, creating an intimate atmosphere that felt perfectly us. Nathan's family had transformed their property with remarkable attention to detail. His mother had coordinated with local artisans to create handcrafted decorations that reflected our relationship constellations mapped in fairy lights above the reception area, vintage record albums repurposed as table numbers, a display of my photography documenting our journey together. Marco had executed his vision flawlessly, creating not just a wedding but an immersive experience of our love story. Food stations featured dishes from our favorite road trips. The bar served cocktails named after significant moments in our relationship. And instead of a traditional dance floor, there were several experience zones where guests could stargaze through telescopes, watch clips from our favorite films, or add to a collaborative art installation. Most importantly, the celebration was filled with people who truly supported us. Nathan's family welcomed everyone with genuine warmth. His groomsmen kept the energy high. And my true friends, the ones who had stood by me through Amber's machinations, surrounded me with love and laughter. The absence of my immediate family created an occasional hollow feeling, but it was largely overshadowed by the fullness of everything else. As I stood with my bouquet preparing to walk down the aisle alone, a figure appeared beside me. "May I?" my father asked quietly, looking more uncertain than I'd ever seen him. I stared at him in shock. "Dad? You came. Alone," he clarified. "Your mother isn't ready. But I am, if you'll have me." He looked older somehow, the weight of recent events visible in the new lines around his eyes. I considered for a long moment, then nodded, taking his offered arm. "I'm sorry, Sophia," he said as we waited for our cue. "I'm sorry I never saw what was happening. I'm sorry I didn't protect you from it. Thank you for being here now," I replied simply. As we walked toward Nathan, I felt a shift within myself, not complete healing. Not yet. But the beginning of something new. The ability to accept the limited support my father could offer while no longer expecting him to be more than he was capable of being. The ceremony itself was brief but deeply personal, with Nathan and I exchanging vows we'd written ourselves. We spoke of partnership, of seeing and being seen, of choosing each other every day. When he slipped my grandmother's repurposed sapphire ring back onto my finger, now accompanied by a delicate wedding band, I felt the rightness of our connection in a way no external validation could ever match. During the reception, as Nathan and I moved from group to group, thanking our guests, a familiar voice behind me caused me to freeze. "Sophia." I turned slowly to find Amber standing awkwardly at the edge of the celebration, looking uncharacteristically subdued in a simple blue dress. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my guard immediately rising. "I came to apologize," she said, her voice catching. "For real this time. Not the performance I gave at your apartment." I glanced at Nathan, who squeezed my hand supportively but stepped back slightly, giving us space. "Your wedding is beautiful," she continued when I didn't immediately respond. "It's so you, both of you. I can see that now. Thank you," I said cautiously. "James postponed our wedding," she admitted. "Permanently, I think. He says he needs time to consider whether we have a future together." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I remained silent. "I deserve it," she added, surprising me. "Everything I did to you, the date, the dress, the vendors, the rumors, it was all so petty and cruel. I'm genuinely ashamed." Her sincerity seemed real, but I'd been fooled before. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I've started therapy," she said, a hint of defiance in her tone. "Real therapy, not just couples counseling with James. And my therapist suggested that making amends is part of my process. But more importantly," she took a deep breath, "I miss my sister. The sister I never really tried to know because I was too busy competing with her." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation. "This seems very sudden." "It's not," she insisted. "It's been building for years. The wedding drama just brought it all to a head. Watching you stand up to me, to Mom and Dad, it made me realize how strong you actually are. Stronger than I've ever been." Before I could formulate a response, Nathan's best man announced it was time for the first dance. Nathan appeared at my side, nodding politely to Amber before turning to me. "We can continue this conversation later if you want," he offered. "Or I can ask her to leave." I considered the options, then made a decision. "Well, talk later. I told Amber. You can stay for the celebration if you want, but today isn't about our relationship. It's about celebrating mine with Nathan. She nodded, accepting the boundary. I understand. Thank you for not having me removed by security. I wouldn't have blamed you if you had. As Nathan led me to the center of the reception area for our first dance, I felt a strange mix of emotions, wariness about Amber's appearance, but also a tentative hope that perhaps, with time and professional help, something might eventually be salvaged from our broken relationship. Our honeymoon at Diane's lakeside property was the perfect epilogue to our wedding. A week of peace and privacy, reconnecting after months of wedding drama. We hiked in the nearby mountains, cooked elaborate meals together in the gourmet kitchen, and spent hours simply being still by the water's edge, talking about everything and nothing. On our last night there, as we sat on the dock watching the sunset, Nathan asked, "Do you regret how things turned out with your family?" I considered the question carefully. I regret that they couldn't see me clearly enough to support what mattered to me. I regret that it took this level of conflict for my father to recognize the pattern. But I don't regret standing up for myself. For us. I needed to do that, regardless of the outcome. He wrapped his arm around me, pulling me closer. I'm proud of you, you know. Not many people could have handled everything your sister threw at you with such grace. I had help. I reminded him, leaning into his warmth. You never wavered, not once. And I never will, he promised. 1 year later, our first anniversary found us in a much different place than I could have imagined during the wedding planning chaos. Nathan's career had taken an exciting turn into environmental policy work, while Eid been promoted to creative director at my company. Wed moved to a larger apartment and were discussing the possibility of starting a family in the coming years. My relationship with my parents had entered a cautious reconstruction phase. After months of silence following the wedding, my father had reached out, suggesting family therapy. My mother had initially refused but eventually joined several sessions, though she struggled to acknowledge her role in the dysfunctional family patterns. Progress was slow and uneven, but it was progress nonetheless. Amber and I had established a careful, distant cordiality. Her relationship with James had ultimately ended, but the experience had prompted her to reevaluate many aspects of her life. Shed moved to another city for a fresh start, and while we weren't close, our occasional phone conversations no longer felt like navigating a minefield. As Nathan and I celebrated our anniversary with a quiet dinner at home, I reflected on the journey of the past 2 years. Would you believe I'm actually grateful for everything that happened? I told him as we shared dessert. Not for the hurt or the betrayals, but for what they taught me about myself. What's that? He asked, genuinely curious. That I'm stronger than I knew. That I can set boundaries and stand up for myself. That I don't need to accept the role others assign me. I squeezed his hand across the table, and that choosing the right partner makes all the difference. The doormat version of Sophia, who had always deferred to Amber's desires, who had accepted her family's dismissal of her needs, who had believed on some level that she deserved less, that person was gone. In her place stood a woman who understood her own worth, who could love her family while acknowledging their limitations, who could move forward without being defined by old wounds. The wedding drama that had once seemed world-ending had ultimately been the catalyst for writing my own story, on my own terms. And that, I realized, was the most beautiful outcome I could have hoped for. If you've experienced family drama around your own big moments, I'd love to hear how you handled it. Share your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this journey with me. There are many more stories to come about navigating family relationships, finding your voice, and creating boundaries. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most painful challenges lead to the most important growth. Your story is yours to write. Don't let anyone else hold the pen.